Hello, let's jump into how to beat Alpha Fenrir. We will go over what he can do, what gear you need, and what dinos work and do not work. This is tested on a server that I rent that is set to be exactly the same as officials. It even crashes and does random rollbacks. First up, what you will need. The arena is very cold, negative 30 degrees Celsius cold. This means you need about 780 insulation minimum to fight here. To get the insulation, you can craft good fur from blueprints, get an otter, and make free curry. Just make sure that whatever combination you use gets you over 780 insulation. Of course, med brews, food and drink are all useful. Unlike other bosses, Fenrir has quite a few special attacks that make him super scary. He has insane damage reduction. Most likely this is set way too high, and maybe they will reduce it in the future update, or maybe not. After all, this is the final and ultimate boss. Well, maybe after all, Ark 2 has been pushed back and they might release another DLC. Anyway, he has a breath attack that does a lot of damage right in front of him. This attack can hit the player directly. It might be best to switch to a health build for this fight to survive. Then he has the same attack as Steinborn, where ice rocks float around him and then he fires it at a target. This does massive damage. He then has an ability where he freezes everything near him. The next attack to watch out for, which he opens the fight with, are the icicles that come up out of the ground. This attack knocks everything in the area up. The final attack of Fenrir is an ability that fires off that looks like a ghost wolf. This can instant kill a player on a smaller dino. On a UD or Rex, it will dismount you and do quite a bit of damage, and if you are close enough, it will pull you into Fenrir. Now the little wolves come from the mountain area, so make sure to position your dinos between you and the mountain to avoid pulling the little wolves aggro. These guys deal some DPS and use ice bites to slow you way down. If you've seen my other videos by now, you know I enjoy boss fighting with Shadow Mains. Well, that's a no-go against Fenrir. In order for Shadow Mains to be good, you need to be able to ride a Mel and use the buff they provide. Unfortunately, Fenrir will focus the player if you are near him, and since the buff only covers a small area, he will aggro to you. On top of this, Shadow Mains do not get his attention, so no matter what you ride, if you only have Shadow Mains, Fenrir will target you. He can one-shot you right off a Shadow Main, Daedon, Deinonychus, etc. Which makes bringing in Daedons very risky if you cannot get passive heal to work on them. I keep having issues with the passive heal, so I'm not sure why. As a solo player, you would not want to dismount and get on the Daedon anyway. To test if Shadow Mains are even viable, I went into God mode just to buff them and see how it goes. These have 35k hit points and 600 to 700 melee. They stood no chance. If they'd had 60,000 hit points or 1200 melee, then maybe. Now Fenrir is a final boss. His alpha form is not defeatable by tamed dinos. They will need to have been bred and mutated to have decent stats, and pretty good saddles. Now I know you probably want to use the Deinonychus here, and as a group, you could have someone on one, but unfortunately Fenrir's abilities are area effects, and the Dine only gets a small window between them to hit it, like 3 or 4 times, then has to leave. If you're a solo, Fenrir will target you if you get close on the Deinonychus. The Deinonychus health is so low that Fenrir rips through it fast, even if you're trying to whistle them in and out. It just isn't worth the trouble for how little DPS it will provide. Due to all the ways Fenrir can kill the rider, I do not recommend running this solo. Now the arena seems to be set up to be huge, and I thought, well, maybe that is so you can use an Andrewsarchus and kite Fenrir. So I went ahead and put a 230 damage saddle on an Andrew and gave it a shot. I put all the levels in health, so you can kite pretty well, but if any of the wolves catch up to you, it's game over. Also, Fenrir's ice rock pretty much melts the Andrew. Now just to test the damage, I went into God mode, and even the damage output would not be enough to kill Fenrir, even if you had 10 Andrews running around with really good saddles. If you do use dinos to tank Fenrir so you can shoot with the Andrew, you would need to position them so that they are opposite, because you cannot shoot through your dinos. Maybe with 10 Andrews and everything goes perfectly, you might win, but with only 10 tank dinos, the tanks will get melted fast, then the Andrews will get stomped on. It seems the battlefield was set up for this, but the damage reduction is just too much. When we try the Therazinos with Sweet Cakes, 2100 hit points, 7 to 800 melee, we get the same results. Fenrir doesn't want to fight the Theres, he wants to kill the player. So this would be tough to pull off. Even so, the Theres still lose. To win with theories, they would need over 1200 melee. Now, the levels on these dinos may seem high, but that doesn't matter. It is the stats that are important. For instance, our boss fighting Rexes, not on Fjordur, have 1800 melee and 35k hit points, but are much lower level than the Rexes I am about to show you. In order to get the stats off of tamed Rexes, the levels had to be higher. When breeding, you can get the same stats or higher on lower level Rexes. Now, using Rexes, Fenrir seems to aggro them better as long as the player doesn't get too close. Luckily, the UD can buff from far away. These Rexes have 35 to 40k hit points, 100 armor saddles, and 7 to 800 melee. As long as everything goes perfectly, these Rexes will barely win. Of course, we will lose quite a few of them, which poses the question: is Alpha Fenrir just out of reach until server transfer is open? Will anyone really want to raise and mutate Rexes to the point of these stats in the next couple of months? It does make sense that he is so strong, and when transfer is open, our Rexes will make short work of him. But how many players will ever obtain Rexes that have the stats needed to win? And the real question: why fight Alpha Fenrir at all? It only gives 500 element, and a level 225 Fenrir that you cannot breed to make it better. Thor's hammer is a core reward, but the majority of players will never obtain what is needed to wield it. So beating Fenrir is really just for completionist purposes. Let us know in the comments below if the stats are within your reach or not. Now for those that are curious, I did test the tech pistol, and no, it doesn't do much to Fenrir as you can see here. Now as far as other boss fighting dinos go, some people like to use Spinosauruses, some people like to use rhinos. I didn't really test either of those. Rhinos are a little bit hard to test solo. You kind of need a tribe to use rhinos. They may or may not work. Of course, you could ride rhinos and shoot Fenrir with shotguns off the back of them, but you need really good shotguns and a lot of ammo and at least 10 players shooting them to kill him with shotguns. His damage reduction against bullets is really insane. And if you were thinking of using a tech rifle because, you know, he's kind of like a golem, so maybe the splash damage and the explosives from the tech rifle would do extra damage to him, well, that's too bad. All tech is disabled in this boss fight. And I mentioned Spinosauruses. Well, there is water in the arena, and if it's real water, then the Spinos might be okay, since they can use their buff. But I'm not sure how Spinos compare to Rexes as far as boss fighters go, and how quickly you can mutate their stats. Spinos are not really something I've experimented with a lot on. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button. Have an awesome day.